My name is Daniel Stephenson. I'm an extension weed scientist with the LSU Ag Center, and I'm up here at the Northeast Research Station standing in front of some soybean weed control plots. So you can see how green the ground is with the beans not harvested with some weeds in my background. That's on purpose, guys. We didn't do this by accident, trying to look at weed control. This is actually some of Dr. Donnie Miller's research. But today what I want to talk to you guys about is winter weed control. Particularly what we have a great deal of in the northeastern part of the state is glyphosate resistant Italian ryegrass. And I'm going to show you some Italian ryegrass that we found here on the research station, as well as another problematic grass that we have throughout the winter, annual bluegrass, also known as POA. And then I'll show you a little bit of henbit later. Henbit's pretty easy, so we'll talk about it for a minute. One of the biggest things that we have to remember about Italian ryegrass is that it is shiny, waxy. And Dennis Nario took some photos of pictures to show how waxy and how it shines. It's really easy to pick out in the field. One of the biggest things that you can tell, and it's going to be really hard to see on the camera, is that when you pull up a ryegrass plant, if you'll grab one of these leaves that are sticking off on the side, then grab the other ones and pull them apart. And right there at that axis, right here above my finger, you'll almost see like two little fingers sticking out. Because those are called oracles. That is a dead giveaway that you have Italian ryegrass. Even when you're looking at grasses that are this small, which this is annual bluegrass. I know it's two different sizes, and maybe you can see the difference in color. Notice the limey green color here on your left, my right, of the annual bluegrass, POA, or the darker green kind of shiny look of the Italian ryegrass. That is a dead giveaway. The next thing is ryegrass is going to grow much faster than you will see annual bluegrass, and typically, unless it is a severe infestation, annual bluegrass will just completely cover the ground in certain areas. It's indigenous here. We just have this problem. This ryegrass is actually moving in. Bluegrass is not resistant to glyphosate. Italian ryegrass is resistant to glyphosate. So from a management standpoint, annual bluegrass is really not an issue. This is what holds our soil since we're going into the winter from from a rainfall pattern. One of the next weeds we'll talk about, and we're going to come back to ryegrass for a minute from a control measure. This is henbit. Here's the baby one. Here's one a little bit bigger. It's really easy to tell apart. We've got lots of other winter weeds. What we have found through research with this particular weed is that it predominantly emerges in October and November. So if you do any kind of late field work, when you have this population, it's typically not going to come up in any great number. So the populations that we struggle to control in the spring are emerging right now, being that it is November the 19th. So we're right in the middle of that bell-shaped curve of when it's coming up. So any kind of late field work, even a glyphosate application, if you don't want henbit, would eradicate this and would move it. And the chances of having a severe infestation in the spring is close to nil. Problem is, if you have annual bluegrass and you have henbit, don't have any ryegrass or any other problems, and you do what I just said, late tillage or even a herbicide application, the chances of you having erosion is quite high. Because if you're using your weeds as a cover crop to maintain your soil. So keep that in mind. From a control standpoint, we mentioned on the henbit, a full pound of 2,4-D is really good at controlling it, but we have found a product through some research called Elevore at 1 ounce. It is fantastic, even on older henbit that is beginning to senesce, kind of starting to turn that brown look, get the powdery mildew that we'll normally see. Elevore is a really good product. If you don't want to pay for Elevore, the pound of 2,4-D mixed with glyphosate is our best choice, but it's not a home run for controlling it. To control glyphosate resistant Italian ryegrass, we know it's up. My advice, if you don't want this to be a scourge for you next year, is to do something right now. And based off some research out of Mississippi State, and the reason I'm quoting their research is this problem began for them approximately 8 to 10 years ago. So they had it before we did, and there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel. What they found is that management with herbicides such as a metolachlor product, which we originally know as dual magnum, Boundary if you're going to soybeans, a mixture of dual magnum and metribuzin, Zidua offers residual control. So these herbicides that we know in the cropping season that will provide us residual grass control is outstanding for this particular weed. But it won't kill it if you spray it over the top of emerged weeds. So that's where we're stepping into something like a paraquat. So paraquat mixed with this, and I'm talking, if you think Remoxone of a 2-pound paraquat, I'm talking 2 quarts of paraquat with 15 gallons of water. So flying it on with an airplane or getting out with your big dicamba nozzle spraying it, you're wasting your money doing that. We need to really focus on getting this killed, laying down a residual barrier that will help control this particular weed. A lot of people don't like that because in addition to that treatment controlling ryegrass, it's going to control your bluegrass and it's going to control your henbit. So then you have naked beds, which is we don't really like because of the potential for erosion here in Louisiana. Next step in the process is moving into winter. That's when we're in January, and we got to be thinking about products, clethodim, Select, and others that go by the name the AI clethodim. That's our next choice. That's not my best choice, and I'm going to tell you why. In Louisiana, in response to this particular weed, up in these parishes here, East Carroll, Madison, Tensall, down in Concordia, and to start to move west, we have taken clethodim and tank mix with glyphosate and 2,4-D in our burn down. And we've gotten suboptimal control, and we have actually developed what we suspect to be resistance to clethodim, or Select. It has been documented in Mississippi. History has taught us that it will move to us. Palmer amaranth began in Arkansas and Mississippi. We eventually have that problem from resistance to glyphosate. Glyphosate resistant Italian ryegrass began in Mississippi, moved into Arkansas. Now we have it. It's just a matter of time before the Select situation comes in. So, if you're going to grow corn next spring, my advice, get after the ryegrass now. Because 1 ryegrass plant per 7 row foot of corn will reduce corn yields by 29%. It's amazing, okay? Secondly, if you're going cotton and soybeans, you can do something else in the spring. Problem is, if it's resistant to Select, the only choices you have is paraquat. And listen, a full pound, okay? Which is a half a gallon of paraquat, 15 gallons of water. If you're going in the soybeans, you can take mixed metribuzin with it. Then you need to come back 2 weeks later and do it again. You're still going to have that big stool of dead ryegrass that could affect your planting. So if you notice what I'm talking about here, I've given you 3 choices. In the fall, in the winter, so like in January, we're moving into February, March, doing something, and it gets progressively worse, and to be honest with you, it gets progressively more expensive and more trouble to control. This weed right here is really troublesome. I'm quite concerned about it because in Palmer amaranth, we've got lots of options to control it. This particular weed can paint us into a corner where it can dictate what crop we plant going into the spring. If you guys have any questions, please call your agent or you can give me a call. Thank y'all.